If you want to be successful in the IELTS listening section, there's basically three things required. First of all, you have to know how the IELTS exam is set up for the listening section. You need to know the format. Number two, you need to know what skills you're going to be tested on. And number three, you need a good strategy for success in the listening section. So that's exactly what I'm going to share with you now. So you're in the right place. So let's get started. First of all, let's take a look at the format of the listening section. The listening section is 30 minutes long. At the end of 30 minutes, when the test is finished, you're given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to the answer sheet. In this 30 minutes, you'll be looking at 4 sections and dealing with 40 questions. And the thing to realize when it comes to the IELTS exam is that the listening section is exactly the same test for both general and academic IELTS exams. If you're looking at getting a score to get into university, you probably need at least a 6.5. So to get a 6.5, you'll need to get between 26 and 29 correct out of 40. 30 and above is band 7 and above. So make sure that you know the score you need for the purpose you're taking the IELTS exam. So if you're taking it to get entrance into university, just make sure you know what score you need before you begin. If you're taking the general test for immigration or a job training program, you'll need a different score. So just make sure, even before you start your preparation, and especially before you book your test, make sure you know the score that you need. There are 4 sections, and each section has a slightly different approach. In section number 1, you'll be listening to a conversation between 2 people, and it'll be in an everyday social context. And usually they'll be trying to make some kind of arrangement, maybe travel arrangements, maybe booking an appointment or setting up a job interview. And then in section 2, you'll hear a monologue, one person speaking, and again, it will be an everyday context. And maybe they'll be describing something in the community or an event in the city, maybe giving a tour of a library or a museum, but it's just one person speaking, and again, it's an everyday social context. In section 3, you'll be listening to a conversation between 2 to 4 people, and it's usually some kind of project that they're working on together. It could be an educational project or a community project, but they'll be discussing what needs to happen to accomplish the project that they're working on. And then in section 4, you'll hear a lecture, one person speaking, and this will be a little more academic in nature, but again, it's not going to be academic to the point where you have to have prior knowledge or understanding of the topic. Again, it will be a very common topic like global warming, technology, family, and even diet and nutrition. So these are the 4 sections, and each section will have 10 questions to add up to 40. Now, there are different types of questions in the listening section. There's up to 10 different types of questions. And the most important thing is to make sure that you understand the strategy and skills you need for each type of question. You'll want to know this before test day because you don't, and in your practice, you'll want to make sure you practice at least every type of question. If you want information and a strategy and to understand each of these different question types, I provided a link in the comments to a playlist I have on my YouTube channel, which has a short video about how to do each of these different questions. And I would encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel for any questions and any details you need about any area of the IELTS exam. I'm sure that you'll find it helpful. So that's the format. Let's take a look at the skills that you'll need, the skills that will really be tested in the listening section. And there's 4 basic skills that I'd like to share with you right now. Predicting, dealing with distractions, following instructions, and time management. So let's take a look at each one of these. One of the most important skills you'll need is predicting. And this is where you take a look at the questions before you listen to the recording, and you try to predict the type of answers that you'll be listening for. So there are 3 things that you really want to make sure that you're aware of in the time you're given to look at the questions. What type of information do you need? Do you need a date? Do you need a time? Do you need a location? Do you need a name? Do you need an amount? These are all things that you'll want to identify before you start listening to the recording. What type of word do you need? Do you need a noun or a verb? An adjective? Maybe a noun-adjective combination. And the other thing that you'll really want to be aware of is synonyms and paraphrasing, because the words you see in the questions may not be exactly the words that you hear in the recording. You'll hear words that mean the same thing, but are not exactly the same. You'll hear phrases that are said in a different way in the recording than are written in your question sheet. So you'll have to be aware of these, and these are the most important skills for the preparation time that you have before you listen to the recording. One of the other things that's very unique to the listening section is that you'll have to deal with distractions. And this means that they'll say one thing, but then they'll change it to the real answer. So what you really need to do, the skill that you really need to develop for dealing with distractions, is to be patient, but don't hesitate. Let me tell you what I mean. You want to be patient and wait for the correct answer. You don't want to jump the gun and write in the first thing you hear, because it could be changed and could be a different answer coming up. But when you do hear the correct answer, don't hesitate. So you have to be patient, but when you hear the actual word that you need or the answer that you need, you have to act and write in the answer without delay. And that's the best way to deal with distractions. Here's a couple of examples of what I mean by distractions. You might hear something like, they live at number 64 Miller Street. Oh, no, sorry, it's number 46. Or, I'd really like a steak for my main course, but I've decided to have the fish. Now, one thing to realize about these distractions, they come very close together, often in the same sentence or the following sentence. Information will not be changed after a couple of minutes of listening. They come close together, so this is why the patient but not hesitating strategy works so well. Just make sure that when you hear the correct answer, you write it in immediately. And that's the best way to deal with distraction. One of the most important tips I can give you is to follow instructions, because you want to know exactly what is required to answer the questions. So there are some things that you need to be aware of. First of all, in the listening section, you're given an opportunity that you don't have anywhere else in the IELTS exam, and that's you have 2 sets of instructions. You have instructions that you listen to and instructions that you read. So it's very important to pay attention to these instructions. Usually when you listen to the instructions, it gives you the context or the setting for the recording that you're going to hear. The conversation or the lecture that you're going to hear will be described when you listen to the instructions. Then when you read the instruction, you're given more specific details. For example, to use 1 or 2 words or even up to 3 words, 2 words and a number, you'll want to make sure that you really pay close attention. One of the distractions that comes up, and we were just talking about distractions, is that You don't want to get halfway through a set of questions and then ask yourself if you're doing it correctly. Did you take the time to read the instructions and then you have to go back and recheck the instructions? Make sure when you read the instructions, you see them clearly, underline them to make sure that you read them. The other thing when it comes to instructions is want to be aware of what's required and what's for each section of the listening section, every question type, and you'll want to have every piece of information that you need about every question. So as soon as you see a question type, you know the strategy that's coming. And this only comes with practice. And again, I'll mention in the link in the comments of this video is the link to my playlist where you can see every question type for the listening test and have the complete information you need for every question type. And there's no replacing just knowing everything that could possibly come up in the listening section and know exactly what you need to do for each question type. And number 4, time management. Now, how can you manage time in the listening section? Because you only hear the recording once, you can't control the speed of the recording or the gaps and the time in between the recordings, but there are some things that you can do to really control the time in the listening section. First of all, you're given time to look at the questions before the recording begins, and you'll want to make the best use of this time. It's usually about 30 seconds or so. So when you're asked to look at questions, for example, it'll say, look at questions 1 to 5. And even though you have all 10 questions in front of you, only use the time to look at questions 1 to 5. This is another example of listening to instructions so that you know what you need to accomplish in that time that you're given. And then this is the time that you use to do the predicting that we talked about a little earlier. And then when you finished answering a set of questions, move immediately to the next set and start looking at those. This is how you can pick up a few seconds here and there that can make a big difference. One of the best ways that you can pick up some extra time to prepare and predict for the types of answers you need is to never check your answers. Because at the end of each section, they say you now have time to check your answers. Well, there's nothing really that you can check other than maybe spelling. So don't use the time to check. Use the time to go to the next set of questions, the next section, and start looking at the questions. And this will give you an extra minute or so for preparing and predicting. And what happens if you miss a question? Don't panic. Just keep moving forward, because if you panic and you worry about the question you've just missed, you might miss the next question too, and then you'll end up missing 2 or 3 instead of 1. Remember, right at the beginning, your goal is to just get as many correct as possible out of 40, and you don't lose any marks for missed questions. So just keep moving forward. And now let me give you a time that you can check your answers. And this is when you're transferring your answers from your notebook to your answer sheet. You have this 10 minutes, and that's plenty of time to transfer your answers. This is the time to check your spelling. If you did miss an answer, you can go back and have another quick look, and if necessary, just guess, because you never know, you might get that extra point, and you won't lose a point if you guess wrong. So these are the 4 skills that are most important for the listening section: predicting, following instructions, time management, and these will really help you to get started as you begin to practice and prepare for the listening section. So let me just finish off with what I think is one of the best ways you can improve your listening ability and listening for the IELTS exam. First of all, you want to increase your skill. So this means that if necessary, If you listen to a recording and answer, and then you check your answers and you see you didn't get as many correct as you wanted to, well, simply listen to it again and see if you can pick up the answers that you missed. And maybe it'll take you 2 or 3 times to listen to a certain question type until you get as high a score as you want. But don't be afraid to do this at the beginning of your preparation, because your goal is to increase your skill without worrying about time. You can also review transcripts of what you listen to. If you're still listening, and you still can't find the answer, you can look at the transcripts and you can read the actual recording that you've listened to. Once you've perfected each question type, even if it takes 2 or 3, then you start practicing by only listening once and improve your score. So first of all, increase your skill, perfect your strategy for each question type, and then begin practicing by only listening once. And one other tip, make sure you only use official tests. One of the best resources is Cambridge IELTS, and then you have British Council and IDP. And I've included links in the comments for websites for each of these official sites so that you can get official practice tests. Well, I hope you found this helpful. Make sure to check out the link in the comments and subscribe to my YouTube channel for everything you need to know about the IELTS exam.